Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters podcast, where I'm joined by my wife, Olympic mental performance coach, Steffany Hanlon-Francie. In these episodes, Steffi and I have a conversation about the different aspects of what we refer to as Mindset Matters, because we believe that for those who are awake, we are living in and through the most impactful time in history. Your view of the world is the filter for how you will experience the evolution and changing dynamics of it. Our intention is to provide you with ideas, nutritious food for thought, and some tools that you can use to help you in being your greatest self and living your best life. Listen in, enjoy. Hey folks, welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Mindset Matters podcast. Steffany, welcome.
Hey, hon.
Two big topics: habits versus discipline. What's the difference? Why do they matter? And Steffisms, that would be Steffanyisms. Where do you want to start this conversation? Let's end with Steffisms. Why don't we end with Steffisms? Okay. How about that? Okay. So let's get into this discussion and this thought process that I've really been thinking about and engaged in the past few weeks, months, maybe even, about the difference between discipline and habits. And part of what spurred or kind of was the spark to this conversation was James Clear had wrote a book, Atomic Habits, and I was kind of looking through the different points that he made. Some great points, by the way, and this is in no way, shape, or form the criticism of the thought process. But what had occurred to me is that people spend a lot of time in this conversation about having and developing habits. And I'm going, something, for me, it lands wrong. These aren't habits. And for me, it is about discipline. So that's where I would like to enter the conversation and talk about a few things. And what's your comments on that to start with?
Well, the first thing is discipline means different things to different people. And I think what we've been talking about when we create distinctions between words like we have in the past, like kindness and niceness, for example, discipline and habits, or discipline, self-discipline versus, being disciplined. Externally, like someone's disciplining you or motivating you to work out, or disciplining you because you did something wrong, or self-discipline, the mind chatter is like, I'm not disciplined. I got to get to the gym and I got to make sure that I'm up at 5 a.m. for the 5 a.m. club. And I got to do this and I got to do that. And the harshness or the softness of the tone of the voice can determine the success of that particular discipline. Now, a habit, for example, is something that you do a little bit more unconsciously, where the discipline is something more conscious. And I just want to make sure that we create the distinction that we're not talking about discipline, meaning, beating yourself up with a big stick and being harsh and setting unrealistic standards and goals, but the discipline that it takes to follow through with an intention is very powerful. And you have to have a lot of self-respect, and you have to, feel quite, a sense of self-worthiness as well.
Well, what showed up for me in this initial thought process that I had around it was, of course, training. It's like have a habit of going to the gym. And I thought to myself, so I've trained, as you know, for 35 years. I mean, it's like I was pounding it all the time. Like I was training on a daily and very regular basis for many, many years. And it never became a habit. Like it was not ever about a habit. It was about a discipline. And lots of times there was no way that I wanted to train or work out or go for a run or whatever. And I did that, but that was just because of the discipline to do that. Now, I connected it to, and this is where it's really important to add one level to that, is I connected it to a vision. So in other words, I was looking at the future me and going, that's what I want it to be. That's what my physically, emotionally, kind of health-wise wanted to achieve. And it was a discipline to achieve that. My kind of thought process around all of it right now is that doesn't become a habit. Even getting out of bed in the morning at a certain time isn't a habit. It is consciously what you're doing on a regular basis. And to me, where it goes a little gray, and maybe I'm trying to split hairs, and I'm not, I'm trying to work through it, is that a habit is in its definition is an unconscious thought. So in other words, you're doing things unconsciously. And we have habits that we're pretty unconscious. Even if we're conscious of it, it's a habit. We're just, sometimes we're conscious of it and sometimes we're not. So if we're trying to create something, does it come out of habits or does it come out of discipline? And that for me is the question. Here's what I think as well, is that I think discipline could be a habit.
Yeah, that's good.
We can have a habit of being disciplined. And I think that's, again, maybe we're just splitting hairs and I'm looking at it wrong, but it's not that I'm looking at it wrong. I'm trying to consider that when we start to get into this evolution of defining and aspiring to be our greatest selves, live our best lives, to be on this journey of development and really showing up to kind of grow into who we see ourselves in the future, that takes discipline, not habit. And again, I don't know the best approach to the conversation other than to say we have to consider that if we're waiting around and hoping it will be a habit, I think if we enter the conversation right away saying, no, it's probably will never be a habit. It is the discipline to carry through. And if you link to a vision, if you link to a goal, if you link to an outcome, then you can say discipline to it if it's a worthy goal, if it's a worthy outcome.
And if it's something that you truly aspire to. I mean, if you remember, hon, when we first got together 100 years ago, I think it was, we went to Arizona and stayed at my parents' place. And there was a man there that you were absolutely fascinated by. And he must have been in his 70s. And he was totally ripped and in shape. And I remember you looking at that going, you know what? When I'm 70, I want to be that. So you may not be consciously aware of setting that intention back then, but I remember it clearly because he would get on his bike and he would go whipping around the neighborhood, and he would go swimming, and he was fit and he took care of his wife, and it was amazing. And I watched you watch him.
He was a cool cat. I do remember that very, very clearly. Now that you bring it up, then all the stories we shared around the pool as we were hanging around. But he was literally had a 70, I think he was 73 or something, which at the time was old, to us and to me.
For us, we're in our 30s.
Yeah, exactly. But, he had a 75-year-old face on a 40-year-old body. It was really crazy how shredded he was. And, the stories that he shared of dirt biking, and I think they spent a lot of time in Tahoe and skiing and, sharing the story about, breaking his arm and not knowing it. It was crazy. It was just so fun, and them traveling the world. But to that end, I think I've set that goal for myself more than once. When I was running a lot, I was running a path and I would see this guy and I go, when I'm 70, that's who I want to be. I want to be that guy. Now, now today, as I'm getting up in, 65 plus, I'm looking at that going, okay, I'm physically not built for that, but that doesn't change the health standard that I have and the standard of physicalness that I have for myself. And that is an aspiration, and that takes discipline. I don't see the word habit in there anywhere, I don't think.
No, I don't think it is. And I think that's where we get stuck, is that when you think about habits, they're generally what are considered somewhat unconscious or negative even. So if you don't want to continue to have the same result, you may have to shift your decisions and shift your mindset going in a new direction. And that may be uncomfortable because of the habit, for example, of getting up a certain time, going down, getting a coffee, sitting down, scrolling through social. Those become habits, and habits have a lot of inertia. And inertia is not your buddy. It's not your best friend, because the body at rest remains at rest unless it's acted on by an equal and opposite reaction. That's my science nerd coming out. I think that's Newton's third law Newton's third law. And action, reaction, and inertia. When you get to a point where the habit is more, the familiarity and the routine is more comforting than it is to focus on what it is that you say you want, whether it's a bigger goal or a different trajectory, or maybe it's even as simple as driving a different way to work. Just notice what your habits are, and are they limiting you? Because I believe that it's the habits that keep us away from stretching into our what's next, not if that makes sense.
Oh, that totally makes sense. It is, yeah, it is those habits that are not self-serving. It's the patterns that we fall into. Again, I often refer to Dr. Joe Dispenza because he talks about habits that it's our body that is pretending it's our brain and we buy into it. Instead of looking at the mental aspect of it, we should be looking at the physical aspect of it and understanding that it's our body that has the habit, not our mental state. But there's something, so I love that part that you said there, which is it takes the discipline to actually break out of the habit, that pattern. Is that what I heard you say, right?
Yeah, because the inertia is so comforting. It's the knowingness and the familiarity. And especially with all the disruption that's happened over the last few years, is that people are drawn to familiarity and comfort. And I'm noticing that in business. I'm noticing that in sport. I'm noticing that when I get off the compound and I go to the grocery store, I'm noticing people are showing up in pajama type wear and slippers, and the comfort factor is all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know if we're good judges of fashion, though.
I'm not, seriously, but you know what? I think there's a place where water flows downhill. And if we allow ourselves, or if I allow myself to, not get dressed, till midday, or not get dressed till shoes or work out, or, I've even got my little weights and my little yoga mat in the office, and I commit to doing something every single day. And then sometimes I forget.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, how do you forget doing a 7-minute warm up?
Mm-hmm.
How do you forget? And it's not that. It's just the habit is so powerful. The inertia is so powerful that it's not a discipline yet.
So there's a fundamental, I think, that we got to go back to, which is the work that we've done, which is often this is all connected to our values, our core values, our driving values. And where we break down is in not recognizing what our highest values are. So right now, when I consider, the training, getting back into my training again has been very, very good, but it takes discipline. But when I link it to one fundamental thing, I have a high value around health. So I know that when I look into being 70 years old, so 5-ish years away, less than, sadly, I look at it and I go, health is one of my highest values. And if I want to be that healthy 70-year-old, if I want to be that individual that is physically mobile and not tripping around, or whatever the case may be, I have a vision of who that person is. I know I have to start that today, but what inspires me around all of it, and what keeps me going, and what makes it easier to have that discipline, is when I'm questioning myself, I go, what would my 70-year-old future self say to me? And it would say, get on the bike, get on the mat, get on the weights, get active, get your 10,000 steps, don't overeat. It would give me all those messages, because I have to link to that highest value. If I don't have that, then it's going to go away. It's not really important. That's my thought.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think that's the biggest thing is, we talk about our work, it always seems to all go back to values.
It does.
And values change and grow. And you think about a life cycle, there's a lot of times where I've got a colleague right now, Kate Good, who I'm working with moving forward in the performance coaching realm. And she's a marketing expert. She's just had her second baby, and she's on the bike every day, and she's looking after herself and her kids and her husband and her business. And I'm watching that. But what's interesting about that is she has the discipline from being a world-class athlete. So you have the discipline and the muscle memory, because a lot of time we used to say, why do you work out? And mine was so I could get off the toilet when I'm 80. And yours was always about how you look. There was like an ego thing to it. And because you were always so good looking. And now it's like, it's a health driven thing.
Oh, I can
and
tell
for
you,
me
you're
now
my
it's
wife.
ego. I just want to look better because we got a wedding coming up in Hawaii in June.
Yeah. Well, I used to say I don't like to work out. I like to eat. And that's why I worked out. And
there you go.
That was the other side of that equation. And yeah, there's definitely some vanity driving it. And I would, in all of that work that I did, those conversations I had, I don't care. I would say, if vanity is driving you to be healthy, then that's great.
Then do it.
Be vain. That was really it. It didn't matter. But I think it links back to what we have to, touch on always, is that when we're doing the work around, so for example, our workshop coming up June 789. That's a plug, by the way, to register and to join us. It is around values and really understanding what is your driving values. And this is where we sometimes have to work really closely with clients, is to really uncover what their values are. Now, I want to just go off on a little bit, is that in reflection of the many guests I've had on the podcast, on the Everyday Millionaire podcast, I am not surprised, but I am always, I guess, enthusiastic and or intrigued by individuals, business people who are very successful. They are so freaking clear on their values. It is unbelievable. I feel like I'm going, oh my gosh, I wish I would have got this lesson many, many years ago. And as much as we got the lesson, there's the discipline to live into your values there. That's a discipline, perhaps, understanding what your values are, what your driving values are, and then staying true to those. What do you stand for? But it was really getting clear on what values are and then adding discipline to that. Back to what I was saying is that when you know what your core values are, what your driving values are, the discipline part of it is significantly easier. You agree?
Yeah. And it's funny, the last 4 times we've done Think Tank and we've done the driving values exercise, which I tend to do with myself and with my clients quarterly. So it's not like they're set in stone. Your driving values are what's up for you right now. And I've noticed that the surprise when at the end of the exercise, how surprised people are going, I didn't know that was driving you right now. And I'll ask the question, well, look at your results. Mm-hmm. Of course it's driving you. You can't fail your highest values. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. So, but until you bring awareness to it, and we do this really cool matrix where you can't bust it. Like I've done it for almost 30 years with clients. You cannot bust this matrix the way that we do it. And the surprise and shock. Some of them are familiar and some of mine have been repetitive. But this last time we did it in Calgary at Think Tank, I had 4 values that I'd never even seen on the paper before. But here's the key. When I look at what the results that I was getting and I look at my life and where I was shifting my mindset, it was clear. Mm-hmm. But I just wasn't consciously bringing them forward into the decisions and the discipline I was taking moving forward. So that's where that unconscious values conversation can sit. And once you bring it up to the forefront, all of a sudden, to the point of clarity equals velocity, things start showing up really quickly. Like we have clients that all of a sudden, the manifestation of 10 years of goal setting all showed up within 3 months. Mm-hmm. 2 big things. I don't want to give it away, but a boat and a house showed up with it. And that's been going on for 10, 15 years of this manifestation, committing, doing the work, figuring out the goals. And then they did Think Tank in Calgary and it was like, boom.
Boom. Everything showed up.
That fast.
Yeah.
And he kept saying to me, clarity equals velocity, Steffany. So now that's his line.
Well, it is also fascinating when you think about the values conversation and what it takes. So again, here's some, when we look at discipline and habits. So what does it take to break a habit? Well, if you can't break what you consider a bad habit, let's call it smoke. Let's use smoking as an example. Okay. Let's say that is a habit. And that's a good one because it's also a lot of physiology attached to it because you literally have a physical addiction to it that you've got to bust through. Now, I quit smoking, whatever it was now, 40 years ago, or whatever the number, a long, long time ago. But the point is I remember well that in order to quit smoking, I had to connect it to, I didn't realize the language at the time, but one of my highest values was you. And you said, you're not going to hang out with a smoker. So it's like, okay, there's some inspiration and motivation, and seeing as one of my highest values was the relationship with you, then I was able to bust that habit, which took discipline to bust the habit and then go into that. So again, it's a values conversation that we connect to. Now, I think some of the signs for somebody, who's listening to this going, okay, well, how do I know what my values are? And that's a whole different exercise. But, if you're going through life, having trouble with discipline, having trouble breaking what you are considering bad habits, yet you know that you have them. When you're not happy with life, when you're feeling uber frustrated in life, when you're not sensing joy and or you're really frustrated with your career, your job, your team, those are all values conversations. And when you start to bust through those conversations, that's where discipline can take over and really propel you forward. And I think that's I think a key part of understanding, having values driven conversations, values driven goals, values driven outcomes. So I'll share one more story about me. I hope I share these stories mostly just to have people say relate. Maybe you can relate to it. So part of my health goal was I stopped drinking. Now, I didn't stop drinking because I had a drinking problem. I stopped drinking because I went, why the hell do I drink? And I couldn't come up with a good reason. Yes, I love tequila. I love great wine, and it's really awesome. But I went and I thought about it and I went, okay, number one, I don't need the calories. Number two, it doesn't really support my health goals. And so when I looked at it, I went, one of my highest values is being healthy. One of my highest values is getting back fit because I want to be that cool 70-year-old. And drinking didn't fit. So I quit drinking. And you're around me, so you know that I did I cheat once? Maybe back in December, I had a sip of something. I don't remember. Anyways, it seems they're vague there. But my point is, I have no desire. I don't miss it. We're social. We get together with people because it was a shift in values.
It was. And, going back to when you quit smoking, you didn't quit smoking, you became a non-smoker.
Mm-hmm.
So even in your attitude and your languaging, people would say, you quit smoking? Go, no, I'm just a non-smoker. So you owned it, and you owned it in the present moment. So the future you is a non-smoker.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, because you quit smoking, you're a non-smoker. Maybe that's, obtuse, but the result is the same. You are a non-drinker. You don't drink. I don't snack. So those kinds of things, like when you take a stand for something, I know snacking is really shallow, but it's just something over the last however many years, it just allows me to manage my weight. It allows me to manage the cortisol in my body. And because food, of course, is a drug. And I was really noticing that snacking was a real distraction, or I would get up and go grab a snack if I was, needing a distraction or wanting to procrastinate. So it's even in the mindset of the languaging. So if maybe someone's listening to this going, well, how do I step into the world of discipline, but seeing a habit that I would like to shift, or I'd like to replace it, which is what some of the smart people say, is they, replace one habit with a different habit. And I find that quite circular.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather say I don't snack. I'm not a snacker. I, in the moment, am not. So my future self will be very grateful that I'm not a snacker. You are a non-drinker. Eventually I may join you on that journey, but right now I still, enjoy the odd glass of wine on the weekend.
You like a nice Pinot. So the language is important, right? When you say you're quitting smoking or you're quitting drinking, the implication is that you are a drinker, you are a smoker. When you say I'm a non-smoker, I'm a non-drinker, then you are that. And so it is a subtle shift in languaging, but you don't own the fact that you are a smoker that's quitting. You're actually a non-smoker. It's just, again, it's a play on words, but it also is a meaningful play on words, because what part of that conversation do you want to own? I want to own the fact that I'm a non-smoker, and I don't want to own the fact that I'm a smoker trying to quit smoking. It is a shift in the brain for sure.
It's so true. Like even with the athletes, the ones that I'm working with right now, it's so historical and deep in the culture, is that they are skaters or they're going skating. And with the ones that I'm working with that want to go to the next, I call it all access, and the highest level where they want to be Olympic and world champions. You are no longer going skating. You're going to train, or you're going to compete, or you're going to win. I'm not a skater. I am a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. And even getting them to say I am a champion, that was really hard. But, allowing it to say to yourself, I'm a champion, but they're no longer just a skater going to skate. I had one team they kept saying, well, we're going skating. I go, I can go skating. Anybody can go skating. Let's shift the languaging so that it shifts how your mindset approaches the training session. If you're just going to skate around, it's like the other thing, when we were setting goals and back in the day, and I kept asking athletes what they wanted to do, and they want to go, I want to go to the Olympics. I go, yeah, me too. Should we buy tickets? They're like, what are you talking about? So you can go to the Olympics, or you can compete at the Olympic Games, or you can train to win the Olympic Games, or you can. So the mindset and the languaging is what up levels, I believe, the discipline when it comes to, if I'm going to link to the fact that my highest value is to be on the Olympic podium, or at least to be an Olympian, I have to then stop being a skater or a hockey player or a biathlete, and I have to become a professional athlete. That's the journey that I'm on.
At the end of the day, we have to have that vision. We have to have our highest values. We have to link to that and consider that it's about discipline. It's not so much about habits. It takes habits to break, or it takes discipline to break bad habits, but it also takes discipline to stay on the path. Link it to a high value. Link it to the vision you have for yourself in a future state. Now, let me ask you this. You weren't just nominated. You won U.S. Coach of the Year.
U.S. Figure Skating, Sports Science and Technology Coach of the Year.
There
Can you
go.
believe it? Technology. I wanted technology.
How did that? I wonder how they link technology into it. But good for you. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. I get to continue to live my life vicariously through you. And that's been kind of how that goes. Now, was that a vision? So think about that. So, I mean, you're pretty disciplined around what you do with your clients and how you operate and all the things that you've got. You're pretty clear on that. So you didn't go out looking for an award. It caught you by surprise. You got nominated by somebody on the US team, right?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's somebody on the board, because when I saw who was voting on the awards, because there's 4 awards with U.S. Figure Skating and PSA, the Professional Skaters Association, that have merged now, and someone nominated me for this Sport and Technology, Science and Technology Award, because of the distance, because of the use of technology, not just Dartfish or Coach's Eye, but Skype and Zoom, and building online programs for athletes. And then the other piece of it was that a coaching philosophy of excellence, mental performance, and a holistic viewpoint. And that's, I think, where, like you say, a 30-year overnight success is. I've been doing this work quietly. And to your point, I don't seek acknowledgement. I didn't even know there was such an award. Back in the day when I was nominated for different awards, there was no category for someone like me. I wasn't a sportsman.
There is
no
category for you. There's no doubt about that. But having said that, 30 plus years later, I can't even count the number of awards that you've just quietly won. And it still always makes me very proud of you, and still surprises me only in that it's not like you go out for awards, you just get awards. So that cracks me up, because people work so hard for awards. It seems they get votes from friends and people they know, and you don't do anything. And all of a sudden you get an email going, "Hey, you've been nominated for US." I mean, that's a big deal. Good for you. Good for you. Awesome.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Ben. And I appreciate that. And it is sort of, you're nobody, 10 kilometers away from your own home. So, but we are 18 kilometers away from the US border. So maybe that's also, the commitment I've made over the last 10 years through Ice Academy Montreal is we work with all countries, skaters from all countries, Canada, US, Armenia, Spain, all around the world, Lithuania.
Yeah, Great Britain. Yeah.
And Great Britain. And we have champions from every country. And so I don't put them in a category of athlete or country. It's because I work with people. I don't work with skaters. I coach athletes. I coach people. I don't coach skaters, and I think that is because of that is why I don't seek awards or acknowledgement. I always say, I'm never going to be on the podium with you. You better, step up and decide what it is that you want. And then I will get behind and support the hell out of that.
Okay, so this is a little bit of a segue into a couple of things, because you do some fun things and you get really creative. And over the 30 plus years that you've been a coach, you've developed a thing called Steffisms, because you've got a very odd sense of humor. And sometimes you play with words because they go in your head backwards, and all the things that you do. And then you went off some time ago and you wrote all your Steffisms down. And then you had a deck of Steffism cards made. And so do you want to pull one, and then we can just riff off it real quick?
Well, it's funny, when I realized, I started writing them down, because I journal, right? I've journaled for, 35, 40 years, meditation journal. It's always been a big thing. And when this hit me, I was actually on a bullet train from Nagano, Japan to Tokyo after my very first world championship was in 2002 in Nagano, Japan. And I had, I think a 2.5 hour, 600-kilometer ride on the bullet train. And I just started writing and they just came out. And it was like these one-liners that I've been saying over the years. And then over time, the skaters and the athletes, the hockey players or business clients kept repeating them back to me or making fun of me in the dressing room or, oh yeah, Steffany always says this or always says that. So I said, maybe it's a thing. So then Marnie Griffiths inspired this, she has her It's Time to Shine cards. And a friend of hers did that. And I said, well, what do you think they could make my Steffisms into like a deck of cards? And she said, yeah, in a heartbeat. So we did that. So now my skaters all get this. And hey, do you want to pull a card?
Pull a card. Go.
Oh my God, this is one of my favorites. If I wasn't me, I'd be so jealous.
Okay.
If I wasn't me, I'd be so jealous.
Yes. There you go.
Way to go, Hyde. Okay, I'm going to pull one for me now. I'll just shuffle the deck and pull a card. Some people say, tarot cards, all that kind of stuff is weird and magical and witchy and stuff. These are just like one-liner quotes that make no sense to anybody except my clients. Ready?
Except for the person who pulls the card. Okay, go.
Oh, ask for what you want. You just might get it.
There you go. That's your game.
Yeah, so here they are. There's a couple gold ones. Like each pack has 10 gold cards that were kind of the big wha-bam, kind of like the quotes or whatever that really hit. Like one of them is...
Do you have a card that goes wha-bam? Like
I do.
Who says that?
This one, Forgive.
Who says that?
Is gold.
Okay.
Wha-bam! I don't know. I
Okay.
think it's a cartoon character.
Okay.
There are no answers, only decisions.
Yes.
Decide.
Decide.
The other one is go where you're received.
Yeah.
Go where you're received.
Don't go where you're not received.
Yeah, or like my mom used to say is that don't go to a party you're not invited to. Let's just like go where you're received. And I've learned that over time, especially in skating, and it's really hard, not being fully accepted in Canada. And I had to go where I was received. And it's a good thing because
You've traveled
not
the
that I
world.
don't work with Canadian
Because
athletes,
you've traveled
but
the world.
travel the world. So thanks for that.
Okay.
So I'm going to take you to Colorado with me. And when I go receive my award, that's so exciting. I get to do it in person. And it's so humbling and weird at the same time.
Beautiful. You are. Okay. Let's call that. I think we've fired off. We've discipline, habits, Steffisms, clarity equals velocity, think tank. Click on the link. Check it out. Come join us.
I think it'll be super fun.
June 7, 8, and 9, right here in the beautiful Fraser Valley. Thanks, sweetheart.
That was fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. If you found value in the podcast, please take the time to rate and review and share with others. Share with your friends. As it is my goal to always improve and to provide the highest value for you, the listener. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions you'd like answered, please email me at ceo@reincanada.com. That's ceo@reincanada.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, Patrick out.